Set as a protest against the ever-present threat of nuclear war, Raul Jorolan's KaBloom transforms the fiery and terrorizing nuclear explosion into a blossoming of flowers, bursting from ground zero, creating instead a massive attack of peace, love, and happiness.
KaBloom came about when you know, as an artist, you normally just look at your atelier, your canvases, and say, what am I going to do now, what am I going to paint? But it was not like it was a deliberate subject matter that I wanted. At the time, there was a prevailing current event that was like creating tension in the region, and that was because of the test firing of missiles by North Korea at the time. So, and I was pretty much into that kind of stories. You know, I love world history. I like reading current events, and at that time, I noticed that this person, this rogue nation, or the leader of that country, was a young guy. You know, Kim Jong-un, and he was like, he felt like test firing these missiles was a sign of like, I'm at par with all of you superpowers, and you know, it's creating some tension around the whole region. No? So, and what dawned on me at that time was that this guy was not even alive during the Cold War, I believe, I presume, because he's still a young man. So he was not around during the Cold War, and probably didn't go through much of the history that you learn from history, like the devastation caused by the atomic bomb explosion in Hiroshima, in Nagasaki. In the Cold War had the acceleration of stockpiling of nuclear weapons by the superpowers, who had more powerful payloads, and you could just imagine how the world would be like if there was a sort of like an Armageddon. No? So that was like sort of like that prompted in me to just imagine the mushrooming devastation, you know, like a mushroom clouds that is like the pyrocumulus clouds that is actually a radioactive fallout and an explosion, and the devastation, the annihilation of the whole city. And I thought, what if an explosion is a burst of energy that brings forth love, peace, and happiness? What if it was like a reversal of the imagery, becoming more like something you would look forward to, something like man would like to happen in their societies, so and the best image to symbolize goodness, you know, are actually normally blooming flowers, and that was like by happenstance. So I started like doing some sketches, and yeah, why don't I paint flowers and make it look like an atomic bomb explosion? So instead of a radioactive fallout, you have all this atmosphere of joy and delight and hope. So that started it. And then when I posted my first KaBloom painting, which was like a fiery red 3x3 piece of oil work, and I got feedback from friends. Of course, when you post and you get comments from artist friends, like, and they said, why don't you make a series? Because that's really so nice. And I said, well, yeah, I just might. You know? And then I got inquiries of like, is that available? So, you know, things snowballed into a very positive note. And before I knew it, rather, I was doing the second series, the second painting, and then the third one, and then the fourth one, and then people just snapped it up, you know, and I thought, yeah, it would be a nice painting theme to sort of like be a break from my sort of like pop art retro sort of like environment, and it's a different way to paint flowers, because although, yeah, the good thing about flowers is it's got a decorative value, but the thing here is that it's not just doing shapes in a vase or in a planter, but rather there is a commentary, there is a message, there is a switching of a paradigm shift rather, where you can change a perception from bad to good, and that became my sort of like painting advocacy. And I think it's gonna persist for a bit more of time. And I like it. I like it because there are so many variations you can do with an atomic bomb explosion. Because an atomic bomb explosion normally has several shapes. You know, it has some have long stems and pyrocumulus clouds here, and then some would have a blast wave that's so wide. Some would be squat. Some would be like dome shaped, and you know, all these things are nice pegs to do a flower painting. At the same time, it becomes more of a statement. So that's how KaBloom came to be. Okay, now how did KaBloom as a title of the theme came about? Of course, you know, Batman, Kaboom, Kapow, Blam Blam, you know, comic book, all this stuff, and of course it's an amalgam of a kapow and blooming, and instead of kaboom you say KaBloom. So I guess it's a simple sort of mix, simple composition of two words, but of course what I like with it, it's a one-word title and it's very appropriate, and it suggests an explosion of a blooming subject. So, and of course that was a nice thing that came out because I was brainstorming with my daughter at that time. So KaBloom is here to stay. It's here to stay. You've seen some of my stuff, which are really a lot of retro, vintage images, 60s iconography, and that's where I actually, what I enjoy doing. It's part of pop culture. It doesn't mean that I'm frozen in time because I'm stuck with probably where I belong. It's not like I belong to the time of that period, but there's so much to derive from the imagery of the 60s or anything that I've done in the past. This COVID-19 thing, this pandemic has sort of like created a worldwide anxiety. Never before felt in this world, you know, in this planet for close to 100 years. So everything, this is something new, and all the world and all the countries that are being hit by the pandemic, by the virus. So my works have been inspired by urban art, retro images, 60s iconography, and these are images of past era where the world was in a way celebrating a lot of technological and cultural breakthroughs at that time. That period in the 60s or the 50s leading into the 60s, it was like a world of excess. There were guzzling cars because people were like having newfound empowerment. They were like, and then they were getting their sort of like building homes in the suburbs. All right, so there was just like there was an air of robustness and happiness that was prevalent during that period. So if you think of the 50s and 60s, everything was like people were dancing, people were just partying, people were just spending, people were just guzzling with their, you know, drag races and all these things, and big cars, you know, muscle cars, and pin-ups, you know, and people were just like, it was like a hell of a wonderful time. That's how I perceived the 50s and the 60s. So images that came out of that period, actually, which I of course was fascinated. were actually encapsulated in joy and cheer, and everything was just people were feeling good. So one thing with this art is that it's sort of like in this age of uncertainty nowadays because of the pandemic. If you look at the art of the 50s and 60s, it somehow becomes a panacea to sort of like get around the dour atmosphere that's now hovering over the whole world. You know, we are uncertain. There's the health issues, and it's really bad, and we just don't want to be caught in a position where we just roll over and die, and just we roll over and die and just accept what's happening. You know, and we have to counter that by a different attitude. And in these unsure times, looking at images of happy and cheerful lifestyle will offset the prevailing gloom and doom that is now hovering over the whole world, and that is a momentary relief if you look at this kind of imagery. I'm not going to paint sort of like what we call a zeitgeist or the mood of the times, because the mood of the times nowadays is not nice. It's not good, so I'm not going to paint anything that looks bleak. I have always been and always will be a relentless person. Relentless in a way that our lives are pockmarked with a lot of pitfalls, a lot of trapdoors that we have to navigate ourselves around that, or else we'll just fall into despair. My art is like that, you know. It has to go against the grain of an impending gloom and doom that sometimes our world is up to. That's how I am. I'm generally a happy person, and I want to project that to the world with my art. I like people that when they look at my paintings, when they look at my art, that elicits a smile. It may be a halakhak, you know, a guffaw, or it could be a faint smile, but I'm sure there's a surge of happiness that's going through their fibers of their being as they view my art, and that's what I like to happen. When I write scripts for my videos, my films, my TV commercials, because I'm a filmmaker also, I like to dwell in a happy note, no to angst. This series definitely reflects my outlook in life. It's a mirror of my personality. And I'm sure if you know people that I know, my friends, my family, if you will ask them how they can describe me, it will exactly be what I just said. All of these paintings give me a sense of delight. All of these paintings, each and every work here was born out of a moment in time when why I painted this work was because I felt that way at that time. When I made a series for KaBloom, when KaBloom was conceptualized as a theme for this exhibit, you know, KaBloom was there already. It's been my series already. But when it became a subject for an exhibit, I don't want to have a painting or a series of paintings where it becomes like the other one is just like a little iteration of the first one. It was just a little, you know, tweaking. It becomes another third piece. And before you know it, they just look the same with a little galaw-galaw here, no? But everything has a circumstance. Everything has a reason why they bloomed And like, for example, these blooming marlins, and every time I think of, oh, what kind of KaBloom am I gonna paint now this time? So if there's an effort like that, it becomes now a favorite piece at that time. They give me a sense of delight. There are reasons why I painted a certain piece, and that's the reason why I cannot say one is a favorite over the others, and because every piece has a story. And when the stories came into being, I devoted the time and attention to create that certain piece. So it really gives me a great sense of difficulty to just part with one of any of the paintings here. And although they are all thematically linked as a series, there are so many promptings why each piece was created. And like I said, inspirations, promptings, and springboards for creating the painting came from different sources. And like I was saying, each one has a story here. So yes, the answer here is no, I don't have a favorite piece. All 16 pieces in that series, in the KaBloom series, are favorites of mine. Whether they are a big piece or the smallest ones, whether the one was done in a month's time or the other one was done in just a few days, they all endeared to me to make them actually even Steven in my ratings. We should constantly create art. Life goes on and art celebrates life. And art will survive. And how?